I've always been a hard worker, but my life didn't start out with many choices. When I was 22, I took a job as a janitor at the Bayfield County Courthouse. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a steady paycheck, and at that point in my life, steady was enough. I had dropped out of high school at 18, feeling lost and uncertain about the future. I didn't have a degree or any clear direction. It wasn't that I didn't want to do something with my life. I just didn't know how to get there. I'd tried different things, but nothing ever seemed to stick. I wasn't bad at anything, but I wasn't good enough to break out of the cycle I was stuck in. Working at the courthouse wasn't easy, but it was steady work. My days consisted of mopping floors, cleaning bathrooms, and taking out the trash. I spent most of my time in the courtrooms, where the legal professionals were hard at work, arguing cases that seemed miles above anything I could understand. The lawyers, judges, and witnesses spoke in a language that felt foreign to me. They were all polished, confident, and authoritative. Me? I was just the janitor, the guy no one paid attention to. But as I swept the floors and cleaned the hallways, something started to change. I began listening. Not in any specific way, but over the years, I grew familiar with the rhythm of the courtroom. I heard the same phrases over and over again, terms like tort, contracts, and precedent. I started picking up bits and pieces of legal jargon, trying to understand what was going on in those high-stakes cases. It wasn't much, but it was something. The lawyers would argue about things that seemed important, millions of dollars, custody battles, corporate disputes. But I couldn't help but wonder, could I be part of that world? Could I, the guy sweeping the floors, ever do what they were doing? When I turned 37, I decided to go back to school. I knew it wouldn't be easy, balancing work, study, and life, but I was determined. I enrolled in a community college, then transferred to a state university, all while still working nights. I wasn't the smartest person in the room, but I was willing to put in the effort. I earned a full scholarship and started learning everything I could about the law. During the day, I'd study legal texts and case files from the courthouse where I worked. It was as if I was finally starting to understand the language I had been hearing all these years. And with each class I took, with each page I turned, I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was more to my life than mopping floors. But even as I worked toward this dream, I never expected that it would be this job, this very courthouse, that would lead me to my first big opportunity. The chance to do something I never thought possible. It all started on a Tuesday morning, about 2 years into my studies. I was finishing up my shift at the courthouse when I overheard a commotion outside courtroom 5B. I paused for a moment, the broom still in my hand, listening to the voices rising in tension. It was the middle of a high-profile divorce case involving Lisa Grant, a renowned fashion designer. Lisa had built her empire, Grant Couture, from the ground up, and now her ex-husband, Max Palmer, was fighting for a bigger share of the wealth they'd amassed during their marriage. Max, a charming but seemingly lazy man, had contributed little to Lisa's success, aside from his presence at social events and the occasional promotional appearances for her brand. Their marriage lasted 8 years, and now, at the end, Max wanted more than his prenup allowed. He was claiming it had been signed under duress, and he was hoping to get half of Lisa's fortune. I'd heard about the case before, but that morning, I didn't expect to be so close to it. I had been cleaning the hallway near the courtroom when I overheard Lisa's voice. She sounded frantic, asking her assistant, "What am I supposed to do? I need a lawyer now." Her lawyer, Julian Marks, had been with her from the start, but I overheard someone mention that he had suddenly withdrawn from the case that morning. I knew from my years working at the courthouse that this wasn't normal. No lawyer just quits, especially not mid-trial. There had to be something more to it, and I could see the panic on Lisa's face as she made desperate calls to other firms, hoping for a miracle. I don't know what it was, but something inside me snapped. I'd been studying the law for 2 years now, reading case after case, familiarizing myself with the legal jargon I had once struggled to understand. My professor, Michael O'Connor, had always believed in me, even when I doubted myself. I had spent hours poring over legal texts, and here was my chance to apply what I had learned in a real-world setting. I pulled out my phone and texted Professor O'Connor. "Professor, Something's happening at the courthouse with Lisa Grant's case. I think I can help, but I need your supervision. His response came quickly. Are you sure, Dan? You're only a second-year student. You've never tried a case. I'm sure. I know this case. I know the law. I can help her, I replied, my heart pounding in my chest. After a brief pause, he texted back, All right, I'll be there, but you're doing the work. I'll just supervise. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. I walked into the courtroom where Lisa was sitting, visibly shaken, trying to get someone to take her case. I walked up to her and with a sense of urgency said, Miss Grant, I know this isn't ideal, but I can represent you today. I'm a law student, and my professor is supervising me. She looked at me, her eyes red from stress. For a moment, there was hesitation, but then she nodded. If you think you can do this, then yes. Please help me. I couldn't believe what I had just done. I was standing there, offering legal help to one of the most successful businesswomen in the country, and I was still just a student. But it felt right. It felt like the opportunity I'd been waiting for. We walked into the courtroom together, where Judge Williams and Max Palmer's attorney, Gerald Vance, were already seated. Gerald gave me a smug look, sizing me up as I sat next to Lisa. I wasn't licensed, but I was ready. I had to be. This was my moment. The tension in the courtroom was palpable as I sat next to Lisa, my heart racing. I could feel all eyes on me, and it was hard to ignore the whispers from the gallery. I had only been in law school for 2 years, and now here I was, about to represent a high-profile client in a case against a seasoned attorney like Gerald Vance. The reality of the situation started to sink in. I was just a janitor turned student, and now I was going head-to-head with one of the best divorce attorneys in the state. Judge Williams cleared his throat, looking down at me with a raised eyebrow. Miss Grant, I understand you found new representation. This is unusual, but we'll proceed. He motioned for us to begin. I nodded, trying to keep my nerves in check. Lisa sat beside me, her face pale but determined. She had trusted me, and I wasn't about to let her down. Gerald Vance smirked as he stood, ready to present his case. Max Palmer was sitting behind him, looking confident as ever. The first witness Gerald called to the stand was Max himself. I braced myself. I knew that Max would try to paint himself as the victim in this situation. He had claimed that Lisa had coerced him into signing the prenup, and I had a feeling he was about to go all in on that angle. Max sat on the witness stand, looking like he owned the room. Gerald wasted no time. Mr. Palmer, when you signed the prenuptial agreement with Miss Grant, did you feel pressured? Max's voice was calm, almost rehearsed. Yes, I did. I felt like if I didn't sign it, Lisa would call off the wedding. She made it clear that I had no choice. I could already feel the argument forming in my mind, but I had to stay calm. I waited for the right moment, and then I stood up. My voice trembled for just a second, but I regained my composure quickly. Mr. Palmer, when you signed the prenup, you had a lawyer present, didn't you? Max hesitated, a slight flicker of doubt crossing his face. Yes, but you didn't ask that lawyer to go over the details of the agreement with you, did you? I pressed. Max shifted uncomfortably. I didn't think it was necessary. So let me get this straight, I continued, my heart pounding. You claim that Lisa pressured you into signing the prenup, but you didn't even ask your lawyer to review the terms of the agreement? Max squirmed, clearly not expecting this line of questioning. I trusted her, he stammered. I didn't think it was that important. I looked at him, my voice steady. Mr. Palmer, you didn't feel coerced. You simply signed because you wanted to marry Lisa. But now, years later, you're claiming that you were pressured because you're unhappy with the terms. Isn't that the truth? There was a long silence in the courtroom. Gerald opened his mouth to object, but thought better of it. Max sat back in his chair, visibly uncomfortable. The damage was done. I had forced him into a corner, and he didn't know how to get out of it. I sat back down, breathing a little easier, but the weight of the case was still on my shoulders. I glanced at Lisa, who gave me a small, grateful nod. It wasn't over yet, but I had just taken the first step toward securing her future. The rest of the trial was a blur. Gerald's arguments were slick, but I stayed focused, carefully analyzing each witness and questioning their credibility. By the time it was my turn for closing arguments, I felt like I was in control. I knew the law, I knew the facts, and I wasn't going to let Max Palmer or his attorney manipulate the truth. This wasn't just about money. It was about fairness, and I wasn't going to let Lisa lose everything she had worked so hard for. As I stood to make my closing argument, I took a deep breath and looked around the courtroom. This was my chance, and I wasn't going to waste it. The courtroom was silent as I stood for my closing argument. I could feel the weight of every pair of eyes on me, but I didn't let it shake me. This was my moment. I had worked hard to get here, and now I had to show everyone, including myself, that I belonged. Lisa sat beside me, her expression calm but tired. Max Palmer, sitting across the room, wore a smug smile, as though he already knew the outcome. But I wasn't about to let that happen. Not without a fight. I looked over at Judge Williams, who gave me a small nod, signaling that it was time. I took a deep breath and began. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is not just about money. It's about fairness, it's about truth, and it's about the agreement that was made, a legal contract that was signed by two adults fully aware of its contents. Mr. Palmer wants to rewrite history because he's unhappy with the terms of a prenup he signed willingly. I paused, letting my words settle in. Max's smirk wavered slightly, but he didn't speak. I continued, my voice steady and clear. Mr. Palmer claims that he was coerced into signing this prenuptial agreement, but the evidence we've seen tells a different story. He had a lawyer present at the signing. He could have asked questions. He could have walked away. But he didn't. He signed the prenup of his own free will. Now, years later, he's trying to erase that decision because he wants more than what he agreed to. That is not how the law works. I glanced at Lisa, who was watching me closely. I could see the hope in her eyes, and it pushed me to keep going. We've heard Mr. Palmer's claims about hidden assets and duress, but where is the proof? There is none. He has presented nothing but accusations and assumptions. On the other hand, we have clear, irrefutable evidence. A signed prenup, agreed to by both parties, and witnessed by legal professionals. We also have Lisa Grant's transparency. Her finances have been clear, and the IRS has found no discrepancies. There are no hidden assets. There are no secrets. Just a man who, years after the fact, wants to break a contract he's unhappy with. I could feel the tension in the room. I wasn't just making a case for Lisa. I was making a case for the integrity of the law, for the principle that people should honor their agreements. Mr. Palmer's actions are an attempt to manipulate the system, to take advantage of the situation. He is trying to rewrite the terms of an agreement he signed willingly, in a court of law, with full knowledge of what he was doing. If we allow this to happen, what does that say about the value of a contract? What does that say about fairness and justice? I took a step forward, making eye contact with the jury. Lisa Grant has built an empire from the ground up, but she did not build it on lies or deception. She built it with hard work, vision, and integrity. She signed a prenup because she believed in protecting what she had worked for, and she's here today, fighting to protect that. She has done nothing wrong, and she deserves to keep what is rightfully hers. I paused again, letting the weight of my words sink in. This case is not about Mr. Palmer's entitlement. It's about upholding the law and respecting the agreements that people make. I ask you to look at the facts, to see through the distractions and manipulations, and to make the right decision. A decision that supports fairness, a decision that supports integrity, a decision that supports Lisa Grant. I stepped back, my heart racing, but I kept my head high. I had made my case. Now all I could do was wait. Judge Williams gave a nod of approval before addressing the jury. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have heard the arguments. We will now recess for deliberations. As I sat back down next to Lisa, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The hard part was over, but the waiting felt like 1,000 years. Lisa gave me a small, encouraging smile, and I returned it. There was still work to be done, but I had done everything I could. Now, all that was left was to hope that the jury saw the truth the way I did. The hours after my closing argument dragged on in a haze. Lisa and I sat in the courtroom, both of us tense, waiting for the jury's deliberation. Every second felt like a minute, every minute like an hour. I could hear the hum of voices around me, but I couldn't focus on anything except the heavy silence in my head. I had put everything I had into this case, every ounce of knowledge, every hour of study. Now it was in their hands. I glanced over at Lisa. She sat quietly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her face was calm, but there was a slight tremor in her fingers. I could tell she was exhausted, physically, mentally, and emotionally, but she was holding it together. She had trusted me, a law student who had no business being in that courtroom, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had to make it right for her. The door to the jury room creaked open, and the foreman entered, walking slowly toward Judge Williams. He looked at us, his expression unreadable. My stomach churned. This was it, the moment we had all been waiting for. Judge Williams looked down at the foreman. "Have you reached a verdict?" he asked, his voice steady. The foreman nodded. "Yes, Your Honor, we have." I felt my heart leap into my throat. I glanced at Lisa again, and she met my gaze. Her eyes were wide with anticipation. The foreman handed the piece of paper to Judge Williams, who read it carefully before speaking. "In the matter of Grant versus Palmer, we, the jury, find in favor of the defendant, Lisa Grant. The prenuptial agreement is valid, and the claims of hidden assets are without merit. Mr. Palmer is entitled to the sum of $3 million, as stipulated in the agreement." I heard Lisa gasp, and I couldn't hold back the relief that flooded through me. The weight of the world seemed to lift off my shoulders in that moment. The decision had been made. Lisa had won. She was going to keep what she had worked so hard for. I looked at Max Palmer. He was sitting stiffly, his face pale, his jaw clenched. Gerald Vance, his attorney, looked like he had just been punched in the gut. They had lost. And Max, who had tried to manipulate the system, was left with only what he had agreed to in the first place. No more, no less. Lisa stood slowly, tears welling up in her eyes. She turned to me, her face filled with gratitude and disbelief. "Dan, you did it. You saved me." I stood, almost in a daze, and walked over to her. "No, Lisa, you saved yourself. I just helped you get there." She shook her head, tears now running freely down her face. "I couldn't have done it without you. You believed in me when no one else did." I felt a lump form in my throat. The feeling of having helped someone like this, someone who had built an empire from scratch, only to see it threatened by deceit and manipulation, was indescribable. This was why I had gone to law school in the first place, to help people like Lisa, to fight for justice, and to prove that no matter where you started, you could make a difference. As we walked out of the courtroom, Lisa squeezed my arm. "I'll never forget this, Dan. Never. And I won't forget the way you fought for me. It's not just about the money, it's about what's right." I smiled, the weight of everything still sinking in. "Thank you, Lisa. But this isn't over yet. I'm still learning, still figuring it all out." "You've already figured out more than most," she said softly. That was when it hit me. This was just the beginning. A janitor turned law student had stepped up, fought in the courtroom, and won. And in that moment, I knew that my journey, the one that had started with a broom and a mop, had only just begun. The next few days felt like a blur. After the trial, I kept replaying everything in my mind. The cross-examination, the closing argument, the jury's verdict. I couldn't believe it had all gone the way it did. I had won. I had actually won. It wasn't just a victory in the courtroom, it was a personal triumph, a testament to everything I had worked for, to all the sacrifices I had made over the years. And Lisa? She had trusted me. I'd helped her keep her business, her life's work, intact. That meant more to me than anything. But the real work was just beginning. The moment the jury had delivered their verdict, I had gone back to cleaning the courthouse floors. I guess it was a habit by then, something familiar in a world that was changing too quickly. My hands were still raw from scrubbing, but I didn't mind. It gave me something to focus on as I adjusted to this new reality. For the first time, I felt like I was truly a part of something bigger, not just a janitor cleaning up other people's messes, but someone who could actually make a difference. I got a call from Lisa a few days later. "Dan, can you meet me at the office? I have something I want to discuss." I agreed immediately, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. The office? I'd never been to Grant Couture's main office before. I knew Lisa was a successful woman, but I had no idea what she had in mind for me. My heart raced as I made my way to the building, and when I arrived, I was surprised at how different it felt from the courthouse. Everything was sleek, polished, and professional. Nothing like the old janitor's closet I used to spend my days in. Lisa greeted me at the door, her smile warm but businesslike. "I'm glad you came," she said, leading me inside. "I've been thinking about our conversation after the trial. You've got something special, Dan. You don't just know the law, you have a real sense of justice, and I need someone like that on my team." I froze for a moment, unsure of what she meant. "What do you mean?" "I'm just a student. I'm still learning." Lisa shook her head. "You may be a student, but you're already a lawyer in every sense of the word. I saw how you fought for me, how you used everything you knew to make sure the truth came out. You've earned your place here." I felt the lump form in my throat, the words I wanted to say, caught somewhere deep inside. "What are you saying?" I finally managed. "I'm offering you a job," Lisa said, her voice steady. "When you graduate, I want you to be my corporate counsel. I've seen what you can do, and I want you on my team." I couldn't believe it. A real job offer. Not just any job, but a position with a company that was worth millions. "Lisa, I thank you, but I don't know if I'm ready." "You are," she insisted. "And I want you to take your time, learn, grow. But when you're ready, this opportunity will be here." I could hardly believe my ears. A job offer from one of the most successful women in the fashion industry, a chance to build my career in a field I was just beginning to understand. The weight of it all hit me in waves. For years, I had been just the guy who cleaned the floors, who was invisible to the people who walked by. But now, Lisa had given me a chance. She saw something in me that I hadn't even fully seen in myself. "I don't know what to say," I said, my voice hoarse. "You don't have to say anything yet," Lisa replied with a smile. "But I know you'll make the right choice." As I left her office that day, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. It wasn't just about the job, or the money, or the prestige. It was about proving to myself that I could do more than I ever thought possible. I had started this journey with nothing but a mop in my hand and a dream in my heart. Now I was about to walk down a new path, one that would lead to a future I had never dared to imagine. And for the first time in my life, I felt ready. 2 years flew by in what seemed like a blink. I had graduated law school, passed the bar exam, and now I stood in a high-rise office building overlooking the city. The view was nothing like the courthouse I had spent years cleaning, the one I had walked past every day, dreaming of something more. Now, as I stood here in a suit, one that actually fit me for a change, I was about to start my first day as corporate counsel for Grant Couture. My heart was still racing with disbelief. I could hardly process the journey from the janitor's closet to an office on the 24th floor of one of the most successful fashion companies in the country. When I first started at Lisa's company, everything felt new. The fast pace, the high expectations. It was overwhelming at first. But Lisa had kept her word, just as she always had. She had mentored me, made sure I understood the intricacies of her business, and, more importantly, the values she wanted her company to uphold. "Justice and integrity, Dan. That's what we stand for, no matter how big we get," she had told me during my first week. Now here I was, sitting behind a desk in an office with my nameplate on it, Dan Carter, corporate counsel. It felt surreal. My hands trembled slightly as I looked over the papers in front of me, still trying to get a feel for what my new responsibilities would be. I knew the law. I knew what was right and wrong. But there was so much more to it now. Contracts, negotiations, protecting the company's interests. I wasn't just studying case law anymore. I was in the thick of it. I glanced at the framed picture on my desk. It was from the day Lisa had offered me the job. I had been standing in front of the courthouse, her hand on my shoulder, smiling. I could hardly believe that moment was real, that someone like me, someone who had cleaned that very building for years, could be sitting here now, holding this job. The image reminded me of how far I had come. It was a symbol of everything I had worked for and everything that was yet to come. As the clock ticked, I gathered my thoughts. I was ready, or at least I was going to give it my all. This wasn't just about legal expertise. It was about making sure Lisa's vision was protected, about ensuring that every decision I made aligned with the principles I had come to believe in over the years. Justice, integrity, hard work. These weren't just words anymore. They were the foundation of the future I was building. I stood up and walked to the window, taking in the view of the bustling city below. Everything felt different now. There was a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose that I had never had before. I had spent so many years wondering if I would ever make it out of the cycle I was stuck in, and now I was here, in a place I never thought I'd reach. "Ready for your first meeting, Dan?" Lisa's voice interrupted my thoughts, and I turned to see her standing in the doorway, a knowing smile on her face. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady. "Let's do this." And just like that, I knew I was ready for whatever came next. The first few months in my new role felt like a whirlwind. Each day brought new challenges, new opportunities, and new things to learn. I was no longer just a janitor turned law student. I was now a corporate counsel for Grant Couture. The transition from studying cases in textbooks to handling real-world legal issues was a steep climb, but Lisa's mentorship made all the difference. She trusted me, and that trust pushed me to be better, to work harder, and to embrace my role with everything I had. The work was intense. I had to review contracts, manage legal risks, and navigate the complexities of intellectual property law to protect Lisa's brand. Each decision felt weighty. If I made a mistake, it could affect not only Lisa's company but the lives of the employees who relied on it. But I had learned to think critically, to analyze situations and make decisions based on logic and integrity, not fear. One afternoon, Lisa called me into her office to discuss an important partnership deal with a major international retailer. The contract was thick with legal jargon, full of clauses that had to be scrutinized. My heart pounded in my chest as I sat down across from her. I knew how high the stakes were, but there was no turning back now. I was here because I had earned the right to be at the table. As we went through the contract, Lisa's eyes never left the pages in front of her, but I could see the quiet confidence in her demeanor. She trusted me to catch any legal loopholes, any terms that could be detrimental to the company's interests. I had studied the contract the night before, going over each clause, researching past cases, and consulting with legal experts. I felt prepared, but my palms still sweated as I raised my voice to point out a potential issue with one of the terms. "Lisa," I said, my voice steady but firm, "there's a clause in here that could be problematic. The language around liability could leave us vulnerable if anything goes wrong. We should renegotiate this to better protect the company." Lisa paused and looked up at me, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then, she smiled. "Good catch, Dan. Let's get that fixed before we move forward." The relief I felt in that moment was overwhelming. I had just helped navigate a potential risk for the company. In that instant, I realized something important. I wasn't just playing at being a lawyer. I was a lawyer, and I was good at it. Over the weeks that followed, my confidence grew. I wasn't just there because I had been given a chance. I was there because I was capable. I was able to handle everything that came my way, from contract disputes to intellectual property issues, from drafting legal documents to advising Lisa on business decisions. But it wasn't just about the legal work. It was about something deeper. It was about how far I had come, from that 22-year-old janitor with no direction to sitting in a high-rise office, making decisions that impacted a multi-million-dollar business. I had earned my place. And it was all because I had never given up, never let myself believe that my past determined my future. As I looked out the window that day, I felt a quiet pride. The journey wasn't over, not by a long shot, but I'd taken a huge step, and I was exactly where I was meant to be. If there's one piece of advice I've learned from my journey, it's this: never underestimate the power of perseverance and self-belief. Life will throw obstacles your way, whether it's being stuck in a job that doesn't seem to lead anywhere or feeling like you're not where you want to be. But don't let those moments define you. Keep pushing forward, even when the odds seem stacked against you. Education, whether formal or self-taught, opens doors, and every step you take towards learning something new adds to your growth. Surround yourself with people who believe in you, even when you don't believe in yourself, like the mentor who guided me when I doubted my own potential. Most importantly, take risks. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there and take opportunities that seem out of reach. Like I did, you might surprise yourself. You don't have to follow a straight path to success. Sometimes, the detours, like being a janitor and a law student at the same time, can lead to the most unexpected and fulfilling outcomes. Stay focused, keep learning, and never stop believing that you're capable of more than you think. Your past doesn't define your future. Your actions do.